Thank you again to Hunter Tools and Thompson Tools for being a sponsor for my YouTube channel. This is the first of two parts. I will cover the bottom of a hollow form, and then in part two I will do some feet and the bottom of a bowl format. Well, hello, welcome to my shop again. Wearing a hat here because I wanted to give a shout out to a good friend Chris Ramsey, that's an excellent hat maker. But one of the things that he does that I want to spend some time on today is feet, and what he does in the bottom of his bowls and vessels. And so we're going to work on these bottom treatments. Okay, let's get started. We're going to do some turning. One of my students, Dave from Traverse City, had a question about how to finish inside the bottom. I've been using a spindle gouge, and it's a little touchy on maybe getting a catch or some skating down there. And I haven't really done that in my vessels where I've actually finished the bottom. So let's work on that bottom treatment. The first thing we're going to do is do it in a hollow form format, and then we'll switch in and do a bowl and maybe show you a little bit of that foot thing that Chris Ramsey does. So we'll get on the lathe, and we're going to part this off and get ready to reverse it so that I have access to that bottom. Now the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to part this off up away from the bottom. This is where it's going to sit on the table right here, but I'm going to give it some waste wood because I don't want to part off the actual vessel, because the parting tool gets it all torn up and I have to sand all that damage. And I want to do something special inside the bottom. So I'm going to part it off, give myself 3/8 half inch of waste wood here, parting it off. All right, first of all, this was done months ago, and it has dried out, and so it's gotten a little bit oval. It's not round anymore. Really doesn't matter. But I've sanded this, got this all nice and sanded down to 600 grit, so it's nice and polished. And but we're going to work on the bottom of it. We're never going to go back here to this area that's wobbling anyway, so who cares if it's wobbling at this point. We're just going to work in the bottom area, so let's part it off first. Alright, so I have a double kerf there, and I could part it right down, but I'm afraid that if I break that last little tenon off, it could get bound up and go flying or drop on the floor. So, okay, I'm going to friction drive with the edge of the mouth here, and bring the tailstock up to hold it. And so I need to make a little recess in the waste block to carry this. Alright, that's a good thing. I'm still a little bit too small, so I'm going to sneak up on this and make that. This isn't round anymore, so it doesn't have to be a perfect fit this way. What's going to drive this is the shoulder. When this seats on the bottom, then that's going to orient it on the right axis. So the diameter of that's not important. What's important is that surface on the inside here is nice and clean and flat. Okay, this is a good example. See how it wobbles a little bit there in the hole? That means it's not quite, the hole's not quite big enough. I'm hitting on the shoulder instead of it seating on the bottom here. So I got to open that up just a little bit more. Okay, now I've got it just a little bit bigger than the vessel, but you see how it it shoulders right down in the bottom, and when it shoulders, it's going to re-true this up so that I can work on that bottom nicely. So we'll bring the tailstock up. I'm using the little pin on it at this point, and find the little, there's no center mark, but I have the little saw area that I can come close at this point. Then I'm going to rotate it by hand and watch the diameter, watch it wobble. See, I don't know if you can see it in the camera with my shirt behind it, it's wobbling. All right, so I'm going to find the high spot, and I move it down a little bit, trying to get it pretty centered. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect here because I'm not working on this part. I'm only going to work on the bottom, but I want to get it close. Okay, I'm going to use my bowl gouge first just to get rid of this little waste wood. I'm going to make my cut that direction from the outside down towards the center. Why? Because the grain orientation is running that way. I want to cut into the side of the tree. I'm not going to come around like this and cut this direction. That would be into the end grain fibers. That would be harder. We want to make the cuts here small and go slowly. The slower that we make the pace across the surface, the cleaner the surface is going to be and the less sanding that we'll have to do. So take your time and go slow. Now when I do this, I always try to finish this outside completely, all the way down to where it's going to sit on the table. Because you can see how it's wobbling right now, right? And I don't want to have to go back there. But if I have to, there's a little trick that I do sometimes. If I've got a little bit of waste wood here that I need to have taken off, if I true this up on the outside, it's not going to match the wobble. Okay, so what I'm going to do is cut that little waste wood away with the wobble. So I'm going to have the bevel support here. Watch what happens. There's my bevel support. See it bouncing? Okay, I've got my bevel on a bouncing surface, and when I make the final cut, it's going to bounce, if you can hear it. So now I can finish that outside in a wobble to match the dried wood that's already there. Okay. Now sanding that off is going to be real easy to clean that up. Okay. I normally don't do that because I do the outside first, but just in case you want to, it's a little technique to use. All right. Now my bottom is still way up here. I've got another 1/4 inch or so wood to take off, so we're just going to finish making the bottom a little bit bigger, get rid of that waste wood. Now in order to get into the detail of down into that corner there, I picked up my spindle gouge now. It has a steeper grind on it and the wings aren't in my way, just to be able to maneuver in there and get in that little corner and make that concave bottom. But I made this concave now so that if it sits on the table, it's going to sit over here. And now, as I always do, I want to make some kind of a little detail in the bottom that shows that it's been turned in there, and I just don't sand it off on a disc sander or a belt sander or something. So I want to give people a little bit extra when they look at the bottom to see that there's some turning down there. One of my favorite things is just to roll a little bead over and make just a single line here. It just gives a little detail. It doesn't take much. I could just use a scraper, some kind of a sharp pointed tool to make a little mark in there, but and scraping is going to tear it up a bit, and I really can't sand fine detail like that, so I don't want to scrape. I'm going to use my spindle gouge again and roll over a little bead. The main thing about this, and what Dave had the question about, was getting a skating or a catch in here after you're all done and everything. So the most important part is have the bevel support. So I'm going to have the bevel support first, and the sharp edge is out into midair, and I'm just going to swing my handle around and get that bevel on, and then roll that over with the bevel support. We have to make sure we have the bevel support. Now what happens if I'd ever touch the sharp edge against the wood without the bevel? It's going to skate. It's going to get a catch. Best case scenario, it'll get vibraty, but it'll probably be ugly. So I want to make sure that the bevel's on first. So now I'm going to start with the handle down, and the flute is straight up and down. And so the edge of the tool is actually 90 degrees to the cutting area here. And then I'm going to roll it over and make a bead. I'm going to swing my handle away from me just slightly and roll it over. And I'm going to end up so that the flute is pointing directly at the wood, and the cutting action is straight up and down. That gives me a nice little slicing clean line in there. Okay, so watch when I do it. Bevel first. Swing my handle. Now you see just a little whisk of a shaving there. See it? There it is. Now that all that does, that tells me the bevel's lined up. So now I'm going to start my cut. I'm going to make a pass a little bit towards the center and roll my wrist so that the flute points towards the center of the vessel. Okay, now my cut was from here to here, right? I finished out that little bead. I just rolled a slight little curve there. What happens on the inside, this shoulder here is just kind of square, and because it's end grain, it can be a little torn up here. So I want to clean the other side of that up. So I'm going to roll the flute of my spindle gouge the other direction. All right, now look, watch what I do. I'm going to roll my tool all the way over so that that tip of the cutting edge is straight up and down. And we're going to go right into that little shoulder, clean up the back side of that, and give you a little bit more detail right in the bottom. Okay? We're ready to take it off. We'll knock that little nub off, carve that away, and be done with it. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe. I was just talking with someone that said that the impression of me is it's my way or the highway. Well, I do get passionate about some of these methods, and this particular method opens up possibilities. It doesn't have limitations that the others have, so hopefully it'll help you enjoy your turning more. Keep turning safe. See you next time.